Hello everyone, welcome back to Average Aviator. I'm Travis, and today I'm going to share my story of an epic journey that I took with the Mooney from western Pennsylvania to the Idaho backcountry. The reason why I want to share my story and why you might want to stick around with it is that not only does it involve flying to some of the most beautiful places and some of the best airstrips, it also involves tons of challenges that I had to overcome, including terrible weather, almost catastrophic maintenance issues, and lots more in between. It's filled with both general life and aviation specific lessons, so stick around and enjoy, and perhaps you'll learn something while you're at it. One thing I forgot to mention was that even though I really intended to film this trip a lot more, there's the challenges associated with it, and the challenges of flying and filming at the same time, especially when you're a single pilot, made it so that I really couldn't focus on the filming and I had to focus on the flying. So even though I did try to film a lot of it, I really wasn't able to make it a vlog style because of the challenges associated. So I apologize, but the videography kind of went by the wayside. So first things first, why would I want to fly my plane from western Pennsylvania to Idaho and back? I mean, what's the point? Well, for starters, I was kind of going through a rough time in my life, and I really just wanted to get away. I also wanted to try my hand at airplane camping, which it turns out is really fun. But third, and most importantly, I just wanted a challenge. There are many challenges with planning and executing any cross-country flight, but it was the mountains and the backcountry strips particularly that drew me to Idaho. For those of you that may not know, mountain flying can be particularly dangerous because of hazards such as mountain wave turbulence, box canyons, and high density altitude, all of which I had never previously faced. Add to that the remote backcountry airstrips of Idaho, and it seemed like the perfect place for me to test my skills, but most importantly, and let me emphasize that, most importantly, my judgment as a pilot. So I'm gonna make an entire video on exactly how I planned and prepared for a cross-country such as this, so I can go into a lot more detail. And when that video comes out, it'll be in the link in the description below. But until then, suffice to say that I took 2 months to plot my route, gather the equipment and supplies for camping, and then review mountain flying training resources online. I didn't take a mountain flying course, like a formal one, because there really wasn't one available around me. But to mitigate that, I planned a route where I went to higher density altitude flat lands first to practice my hand at high density altitude, and then I slowly worked my way into the mountains from there. Even though I didn't take a formal course, I still suggest that new pilots take that before they head into the mountains. One of the things I did before I left was a really thorough check of the Mooney and some preventative maintenance items like tires, brakes, and an oil change, so I didn't have to do that stuff in the middle of the trip when I was thousands of miles from home. Though I didn't know it, that oil change kind of set the tone for the entire trip, in that it was filled with random maintenance issues. Most airplanes are equipped with a spin-on oil filter just like a car, but my airplane is equipped with an oil screen that bolts onto the back of the engine. Apparently at some point in its life, somebody had taken off that oil screen and replaced one of the bolts with a bolt that wasn't of the correct grade. So when I went to tighten that bolt up, it completely snapped, leaving the end of the bolt in the accessory case. And I thought, well, there goes my entire trip. Scrubbed, because I'm gonna have to take off the entire accessory case in order to get this stupid bolt out. But thankfully, thankfully I was able to get 2 picks in there, and there was enough of an angle on the sheared off bolt in the accessory case that I was able to get a pick and then push it around and spin it until I could grab it with pliers and pull it out. Crisis averted, right? So after that harrowing oil change, I was all set and ready to go. My first stop was India 19 because I had work I had to do that day. And if you've seen any of my previous videos, India 19 is a famous airport for me because I have had terrible luck there. And this day was no exception. I took off and I noticed a small oil smell, like real, kind of faint, but it was there. And I figured, oh, maybe it was left over from the oil change again. Because right after takeoff, the smell went away. And I was like, okay, well, it went away. It must have been from the oil change. It has taken me 3 times to learn this lesson, so I'm going to emphasize it here because 3 times I have had this happen to me where I've smelled oil on takeoff and then it disappears. And I think, okay, well, it smell disappeared. I must not, it must be fine. It's not leaking. Wrong, it's leaking. If you smell oil on takeoff and then it disappears, you're still leaking oil, probably. 3 times it's happened to me where I've smelled it and then it's gone away and you think the problem is gone. It's not, it's just that you don't smell it anymore. So it took me 3 times to learn this. Hopefully it doesn't happen again, but if you smell oil on takeoff, turn back around, land, because even if the smell goes away, you're probably still leaking oil. But anyway, back to the flight. I take off, it's at night, and if you've seen my previous video, it took me right over Columbus, and this time I didn't have any issues with the controllers. I contacted them at 4,500 feet at 20 miles out. They heard me. I was cleared through the Class Charlie. It was amazing. It was everything that the previous flight over that airspace was supposed to be. And I really felt like a real pilot at that point. But I landed at India 19. It was dark. I parked. I shut down. I did my training the next day. And then I came back out to the airplane the next day. And lo and behold, there was a pile of oil underneath on my nose gear. And I thought, well, crap. That's not good. So after I discovered that oil, I pulled apart the cowling and tried to find the leak. It was obviously coming from the oil screen housing. So I tried to figure out how to take it out, but I really didn't have the right tools. Thankfully, the guys at Mac Air, awesome guys, particularly Tim. If you're watching this for some reason, Tim, you've helped me out so many times. You're awesome. Can't thank you enough at Mac Air. He even came out to the airport on his day off, took him an hour to drive out there, and then helped me with my oil housing, and then we found a gasket, which was what ultimately was leaking. And we washed the engine down with some degreaser to make sure that, because once there's oil everywhere, it's really hard to find a leak. So we washed the engine down with the degreaser after we put everything back together, and did an engine run, and there's no oil leak at all. But when I did the mag check during my engine run, because I'm doing an engine run, why not do a mag check? I did a mag check during my engine run, and for some reason the left mag, whenever you switch to the left mag, their engine was running so insanely rough. It would just run extremely rough, and I have an engine monitor, and the number 3 EGT just died completely every time I'd switch to the left mag. So because we had just washed the engine with degreaser and then water, we figured maybe water had gotten into the mag and was causing issues for some reason. So we thought, well, maybe we don't really have enough time tonight to delve into anything. So let's just leave the cowling off. Maybe the heat from the engine will evaporate any water that got in there, and we'll just leave it overnight and come back out in the morning and see if it does the same thing. Ran the engine until it was hot, pushed the plane back in the hangar, left it overnight, came back out the next morning, went to go start it up, did a run up, left mag, dead on number 3 again. We did a lot of troubleshooting that day to make sure that was the mag and there was nothing else we could do, make sure there wasn't a P lead or a wire harness or something else wrong with it, or spark plug. Did a bunch of troubleshooting, determined it was in fact the left mag, and decided that we had to pull it and send it out to get overhauled. So I knew it was going to take a while to get the mags done. Even though it was only the left mag that was technically bad, both of them were pretty old, so I decided to have the right mag done at the same time. Just figured since you have one out, you might as well just take the other one out. And I kind of wanted good mags for the trip anyway, so I sent them out, and I figured, well, it's going to be a while, so I had a friend come pick me up and take me back home to wait for it. I was expecting to wait like a week or something like that, and Mac Air, like I said, the guys at Mac Air are awesome. They had it done in a couple days. It was crazy how quick they had that done. So I came back out to Dayton and did an engine run. The mags, the wire harness, and the new spark plugs did awesome. It was purring like a kitten. So I figured I'm gonna do a maintenance flight, just a quick flight around the pattern to make sure that everything's good before I blast off to somewhere that didn't have as good of maintenance as Mac Air. So I did a lap around the pattern and I smelled a little bit of fuel. So I landed, and I was just taxiing in. The smell of fuel was pretty bad, and I shut down. And when I shut down, there was a maintenance guy who was like pointing to the nose of my airplane, and I was like, oh gosh, what now? Jumped out of the plane, and there was a giant puddle of fuel right in front of the nose. And we didn't know exactly where it was coming from, but the maintenance guy was saying, hey, I've seen this in Mooney's before. It could be a cracked fuel selector, and if it's that, it's gonna take weeks to fix. And I was like, oh gosh, not again. Like, something doesn't want me to do this trip. But I pulled the panel, and that is in the nose of the Mooney. And I don't know if this is worse or better. The main fuel line from the fuel selector, the fitting from that main fuel line to the back of the firewall was loose. And it was loose enough that fuel wouldn't leak out of it sitting on the ground, but as soon as you put pressure to it with a pump or with the engine, it started leaking out of that like crazy, which is why I didn't catch it on the pre-flight, because there's no pressure in it. There's no way to know it's leaking. But if that had disconnected in flight, that would have been really bad. It would have killed my engine because the engine would have been starved of fuel. So thank God that didn't come completely loose in flight. Thankfully, even though it had the potential to be extremely disastrous, it wasn't, and it was really easy to fix. But by the time I got it fixed, after pulling the panels and then tightening it up and making sure everything else was good, I checked all the fittings on that fuel system. By that time, it was late, and I just figured I'm just gonna scrub it, and then I'll take off tomorrow morning. So after all of these issues, I really had lost a lot of faith in my airplane. I didn't know what else I was gonna face. I had already spent a ton of money just fixing the airplane on the first leg of the trip. And I didn't know it was gonna be in store the whole rest of the trip. And maybe all of these maintenance issues were a sign saying I should turn around. The next day I got to the airport, took a lot of time to pre-flight it, just make sure everything is good. I took off, and I still had that feeling even when I took off. And part of me just wanted to turn around and head east back home, but just something about the challenge and something about even though I had spent a lot of money on maintenance and I didn't know what lied ahead, even though there's part of that makes me want to turn around, it's that same challenge, I guess, that same unknown that made me want to chase it. So I pushed through that sinking feeling and that really anxiety, this is a good way to put it, and I continued heading west. And I headed west for as long as I possibly could that day. I didn't know exactly how long it was gonna take me, and I just figured I'd stop when I was tired, or if I got into some weather, or if I had another maintenance issue. I didn't know when that would be, but I'm just gonna head west as far as I could possibly go, and that's what I did. So taking off in the beautiful Ohio morning, headed west as far as I possibly can is where I'm going to leave you in this episode. In the next episode, I'm gonna talk about a hilarious story involving Cirrus pilot stereotypes and some ridiculous weather involving turbulence and thunderstorms that I encountered in Wyoming, as well as my first experience with flying in high density altitude and real mountains. So if that interests you, hit the subscribe button, check the link below once the video is out, and follow along. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see ya.